So, today morning, I have a question for you guys. So, by raising of hands, who absolutely loves to go through absolutely difficult times and you have no clue where to go? Who just loves to go through seasons like that? Well, I don't. I was just raising my hand to show you how to raise your hand. Yeah, I don't either. Been there, done that, tried that. Probably will try it someday again, and that's okay. But I want to give you guys a fight today morning. Now, before you go ahead and throw the rotten tomatoes, we'll just wait till the end of the message. I got a place that you can fight from, so we'll give you some tools. But anyways, so persevering. I called the message testing after the promise. God gives us a promise. He shows us where He wants to take us. He gives us our call. We get all excited about it. We're like, yeah, success. But then after He gives us the promise, He doesn't always inform us about the details of the testing. That tends to come after that. And these stories that I want to share from the Bible today morning have a lot of that. Like Joseph being one. He had these dreams that these wheat sheaves bowed to his, and then another dream where the stars and the sun and the moon bowed to him, and he shared it with his family, and obviously he didn't gain much popularity with them, telling them that they were going to bow to him. It didn't go over very well. And so his brothers learned to hate him pretty bad, and he was his dad's favorite kid, and got the coat of many colors and all that, and then so his brothers, they got smart, and they sold him into slavery. They're like, hey, we can, now watch, let's watch you rule over us, as a slave. And so they did that, and so he was a slave for a while, and then he worked his way up in Potiphar's house, and that seems like success. You would think that, okay, so I'm called to be a businessman, for example, and I know God is going to bless me financially, and this is where I'm going. I'm going to bless a lot of ministries and stuff. And then when your business goes down or you experience a setback, you're like, am I not hearing right? God, where are you? You right away think God has left you. That's how I feel all the time. When I face something difficult, it's just by nature we tend to be like, what's going on? And so anyway, so he had a setback again. He had this success in Potiphar's house, and then he got a setback, right down to the bottom, probably even worse than a slave. He was in prison. And then when he did interpret a guy's dream, and he said, well, hey, you're going to get famous, and so you're going to get next to Pharaoh, and I need you to remember me. And, of course, he got famous, and he forgot about it. And so he was stuck in prison. But then as time went on and he'd interpret some more dreams, and Pharaoh realized that he had this gift, and he went to where he was called to be, but he had all these valleys and dips he went through first. Sometimes it feels like when we're going where we want to go, and I should have drawn a graph for this, but there's times where it literally feels like you're going backwards. You're like, well, this is not where I'm supposed to be going. Noah is another one. He was told, God said, hey, I'm going to destroy the earth. I need you to build an ark. And that's what he did. And I don't know, it was many years that he built on that ark. And there had never even been rain yet, if my understanding is correct. The earth hadn't seen rain at that point in time yet. And so he was building completely out of faith. Kind of the faith has tracks to run on. He was like, I know this is what God has called me to do, and that's what he did. I bet he got ridiculed many times throughout that process. I sometimes wonder if I didn't study whether or not he built the ark all by himself or if he hired people to do it. But he could have. I could see him. He could have made this deal and said, hey, you guys want to help me build the ark? The earth is going to get destroyed. There's going to be rain. I know you guys haven't seen that before. It's all not real, but it's okay. So if this doesn't happen, if I'm wrong, I'm going to pay you, and if I'm not wrong, well, I won't have to pay you. I don't know. I don't know if he did that or not, but he could have. He totally could have. Anyways, that's Duane's version of I don't know. There should be a book of Duane or something. lots of sarcasm in it or whatever. Anyways, and so there was that. Abraham was another one. God said, hey, I need you to pack up and move. I'm going to make you very successful. Abram could have been, he probably was excited about that. And then God's like, and then I'll tell you where to go. And he, led him in circles. And it took a long time to get where he was going. There was a process. There was a journey. But he had to step out in faith. And so when you come up into a season of where you need to persevere, you can look at these stories and say, all right, there is a process. There's a process. To, like, on a very simple note, to be a bodybuilder, like, there has to be resistance. You have to create resistance for yourself to gain strength, to gain muscle. I'm looking at you, Arlie. I'm trying to be a professional over here. Like, yeah, you gotta have resistance, whatever that means. But I should try exercising sometimes, probably. But anyways, and so there's got to be resistance. There's a verse that I should have put in the middle, but I put it in the end. James 1, 2, and 4. Consider it a sheer gift, friends, when tests and challenges come at you from all sides. You know that under pressure, your faith life is forced into the open and shows its true colors. So don't try to get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work so that you become mature and well-developed, not deficient in any way. Don't get out of it prematurely. That's someone who's a little bit hard because we face a challenge, we face something difficult, and it's uncomfortable. Like, nobody raised their hand when they said, you love to go through hard times. Like, we don't. But to, in that moment, say, okay, God, where are you? What are you doing? Plugging into what he's doing. Spending time in the Word, spending time with him, and be like, Jesus, what is it that you're trying to accomplish here? And it may very well be that he's trying to build your faith. It says that you're not deficient in anything. Another Old Testament story that I like a lot, that has been encouraging to me many times, is David's story. And Ian Bird already shared it last Sunday, but I'll say it again. That's one story. When I look at persevering, King David is one character that I have to admire. He, at a very young age, was, and I don't know the age exactly, but at a very young age, he was anointed to be king. So Samuel, this judge came, this prophet came, and anointed him king. And so he knew where he was going. Like, he was anointed. He was like it was a done deal. And we often would feel like, okay, cool. Well, then I guess straight on to Jerusalem, and we'll let Saul know that he can resign, and I got this. But that's not exactly how it went. He, as a shepherd boy, he fought. I don't know why we say boy, but anyways, whatever the case, he killed bears and lions. So he must have been pretty strong or a lot of faith. But he killed bears and lions. He had training. There's a process that he went through. Then the story goes on. He went to see his brothers in battle, and just to kind of check up on them and whatever, see if they were still winning or whatever. And that's, I wonder if they were sometimes a bit embarrassed with him. Well, I mean, they were. They didn't like that he showed up. But anyways, they weren't doing too well in battle. There was a problem. He showed up and he saw a problem called Goliath, and nobody was facing Goliath. And so he, anyways, decides to. He's like, okay, well, someone's got to do something. So I mean, I've killed bears and lions before. Same thing. And so he decided to take this guy on. And Saul, well, he being a king, he says, well, you need armor, you need this, you need that, and it's a bit like the comparison game. We sometimes say, well, so and so does this, so I'm going to do it. I mean, we want to learn from each other. Don't get me wrong. But we sometimes feel like, well, so-and-so does this, so that means I got to do it exactly like that. And you may not have had training in that. That might not be the way God wants to do it. David had, as he used his sling and a staff that he had used to drop these bears and lions. So he dropped the armor and then went with a sling. And Graham Cook tells a funny story. Again, it's something we have to read into a little bit, but. So King David was going to face Goliath here, and he had been anointed to be king, and he had these promises in his life, and he had a lot of faith in them, and so when David was running into this valley, like this is what could have ran through his head, is that, okay, so I've been anointed to be king, I haven't been king yet, One of us is going to die today. You know, he could have been telling us to Goliath, one of us is going to die. I haven't been king yet, so it really sucks to be you. You know, he could have said that. I don't know if he did or not, but he sure could have, because, you know, he had a promise he was standing on. So when you're facing these giants, when you're facing these seasons of needing to persevere, go back to the promise. Either a prophetic word or spending time in the Bible, spending time with Jesus, and just be like, okay, Jesus, where are we going with this? To step back, stand on that promise that Jesus has given you. Back in 2012, me and Clara went to school in Toronto, and one of the weeks that we were there, I don't know, it's like a 12 weeks of teaching or a bit more. And one of the weeks is a week focused on the prophetic entirely. And so this character that was speaking there, he gave everyone a prophetic word, and he told me, he's like, yeah, the next 3 years, there's going to be a lot of change in your life. And there's going to be a lot of this and that going on, and you know, I mean, had he said 4 years, it would have been just as accurate. He even went as far as saying, you know, God will take something from you that's really important to you right now, but He'll replace it with something that you'll find very exciting. And so, you know, he gave hope, but he didn't go into the details of what I was going to all face. So on our way back, we were on outreach a month before school ended, and Pastor Brent at that time, he messaged me, and he's like, hey, I'd love to sit down with you after you come back from school. And I was okay, cool. And so a month later, we were driving home from Toronto, and I have another message from him. He's like, yeah, I know you're coming back, and you're going to be a real tornado, because, you know, in a week you leave again for a week, but I'd really like to sit down with you in between there. And I was like, man, this guy really wants to talk. And so I gave it some thought, and I'm like, I think he's going to ask us to be involved in youth. And in Toronto, I told Clara, I said, you know, when we went home, I said, I don't think we're going to be in youth ministry, because that just takes something special, like, you know, you know, that's anyway. And so I was like, I don't think that's where we're going to go. So we got back, and we were going to step out of the house to go for lunch with Brent, and I asked Clara, I said, so if he asks, like, if you know, my feelings are right, and he's going to ask for us to be in youth leadership, like, what do we tell him? I won't repeat the exact words. It's not Sunday morning words, but basically, no, in a very clear and descriptive way. It was absolutely not. I mean, good. We're on the same page. I'm glad. And so, you know, it's how I felt. I was like, no, it's not going to happen. I'm getting to a better part yet. Don't worry about it. And so we went for lunch, and sure enough, 15 minutes after he sat down, right to the point, he's like, so I'm looking for youth pastors. And I said, well, this is what we said walking out of the house. And he didn't really flinch at that. But we told him, I said, you know what, you've asked, we're going to pray about it. So we prayed about it, looked at our prophetic words, and just like, is this really where God is wanting to take us? And I mean, here we are, 7 years later, and it's been really good. So, you know, Jesus knew better. Yeah, it's been good. So anyways, sometimes God's plan is a little different than ours. So that was one thing that, you know, that was a little bit of a change in our life. And then you know, soon after saying yes to that, we started contemplating buying into the family farm. And you know, Clara had a bit of a check in her spirit. She wasn't quite sure if that's really where we were going. And I felt like I'm called to ministry. So, you know, dealing with turkeys here, and I could use that as an example. I've learned how to deal with turkeys. Anyways. So we were praying about it and thinking about it, and it wasn't a clear no, but we just weren't quite sure if that was supposed to go. So but we didn't have a different idea, and we thought, hey, it's a good opportunity, so let's do this. So me and Leroy were talking about it, and I told him, I said, hey, I want to do this, but I'm not sure I'll be doing this for very long. And he right away was just confidently, he's like, yeah, I don't think you'll do this longer than 3 years, but you know, we don't know better than that, so let's do this. Well, guess what? 3 years later, we decided to sell the farm. So then just before we made that decision, I had a little fight with cancer. It wasn't very entertaining. I learned a lot, but it wasn't very entertaining. The doctor, when he told me that, when he came to the office and told me that I had cancer, he's like, yeah, I've got some good news and some bad news for you. Good news is you're going to live. I'm like, whew. But bad news is that you're gonna have a rough 6 months to a year. And well, he wasn't kidding. But then he tagged on. He's like, yeah, and like people, we were talking a little bit about this survival rate and all that. And he's like, yeah, people die of a common cold and they die of this cancer. I was like, okay, so I'm supposed to be comforted by this, or is the common cold that bad? And so, anyways, that's how he compared it. And so that was kind of in the in those 4 years. And something about, when we talk about all these battles and facing battles and persevering and all that, I had one of the students ask me, he said, will God ever ask me to do something that I absolutely hate? And I don't have an answer for that. I really don't. But I know that he sometimes asks us to persevere. If somebody had told me that if this prophet had told me that, in the next 3 years all these things will happen, if he had listed cancer in that, I would have lost my stuff. I wouldn't. That would have been too much for me. If we sometimes when we face something, when we face it, there's a grace to face it. But if we try to fight tomorrow's giants today, we're gonna get very tired. And so what I'm trying to say is don't be scared. There are challenges. There's seasons of challenges coming, but when the doctor told me I had cancer, my heart kind of jumped a little bit. I'm like, oh wait, I'm going to have this battle now, I guess. This took out my dad some years ago, and my grandma, and well, the list goes on. And I had a bit of a, whoa, okay, all right, we've got to fight. But I had the grace to face it. I didn't absolutely panic. Now, I had to a few times go and talk to friends and some mentors and just be like, hey, I need a shot in the arm of energy because I'm tired and this is not very much fun. But God gave me the grace to face it. So if you feel like you're standing at the edge of a battle and you're like, oh man, like how am I going to do this? Don't worry about it. When you get there, God will give you the grace to face it. 1 Corinthians 9, 25. Everyone who competes in the games trains with strict discipline. They do it for a crown that is perishable, but we do it for a crown that is imperishable. So why persevere? There's a way bigger picture. It's easy to get caught up in our life on this planet. But there is a way bigger picture. There is a crown that is imperishable. That's why we persevere. And so this fight that I talked about in the beginning, I said I'd give you guys a fight. There is one fight that is not yours, and there is one fight that is. And I like to use King David as an example on this. He fought all kinds of battles in his life. But the one battle that, just from my observation of the story, that he never fights is he never fought to be king. He only ever fought the giants and the challenges that he was facing in the moment, and he was developing his character. It was the testing after the promise. God had promised him he'd be king. But King David never goes and takes on Saul. He even gets all this success. So he kills Goliath. That gains him some success. He eventually becomes a general in the army, one of the top guys in the army. He has all the power in his hands. And yet when Saul decides to kill him, which I'm fairly certain David had enough friends to reverse the tables on Saul. He could have done it quite easily. But he runs. He says, all right, I'm not going to touch this man that God has placed here. And so he actually runs. He runs straight away from the very thing he's called to be. And that has got to take some courage to to know that, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what God has called me to do. This is what he has designed me to do. And to have to run away from that, from the very person that's in power over where he was. So he ends up running, but what he does not do is he never takes on Saul. Excuse me. He never takes on Saul. He never picks a fight with him. In fact, the one time that he did end up cutting a little piece of his garment off, he felt guilty about it because he had touched God's anointed. And so the fight that is not yours is the fight to become to get to this promise. Your fight is to keep your heart right in that process. King David fought for his heart, fought for his relationship with God. God called him a man after his own heart, but he never fought to be king. Later, when Absalom wants to come and overthrow him and wants to destroy him, his advisor says, "Hey, aren't you going to pick up a fight? Like there's somebody coming for your throne. You need to fight for this." And King David was like, "No, if God is done with me, then I don't want to fight." Because you'd be fighting God at that point in time. If God is not done with me, I don't need to fight. That was, he knew his battle. Psalm 23. I'm just going to read it to you guys. There's a couple parts that I want to point out that I always find encouraging. But the Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. So keep in mind this persevering thing. Like you're persevering, you're going through something that's difficult. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along the right paths. So God guides us along the right paths, even though it sometimes seems very backwards. Bringing honor to his name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid. For you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Just because you're in a difficult season doesn't mean there won't be blessings. Surely goodness and unfailing love will pursue me. This is the Message version, so it's a little easier to read. All the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord. I absolutely love verse 5. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. There's a little bit of a reverse thought maybe, but when we're surrounded by enemies, we sometimes just want to, pick up a fight. And I think, we are in a war zone, so it is a fight. But he prepares a table for us in the presence of our enemies. So Graham Cook says this one, I absolutely love it. You're surrounded by enemies, look for a table. God's got something for you that's very valuable. It's easy to get distracted and be focused on our enemies and focused on our problems. But God says he prepares a table for us in the presence of our enemies. I want to read another couple verses here for closing. And then I want to invite the prayer team up. So all this talk of fight and persevering and facing challenges and all that, I want to kind of show you the other side of that coin a little bit. I want to give you a place to fight from. These battles that we do have to face. Matthew 11:28 or 30. Here's a place to fight from. Are you tired, worn out, burnt out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Jesus says work with me, so it's not like there won't be work. But he says work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly.